Alhamdulillah, I memorized the Qur'an by the age of 14, having started as a 7-year-old. And by the end of my hifdh journey, I could memorize an entire page in as little as 6 minutes. My journey and the journey of countless others shows that it is absolutely possible to memorize the Qur'an really quite quickly, but you need to know the right techniques, and it still will be hard work, and it probably still will take a few years. So in this video, I'm going to share 6 powerful memorization tips that most people don't know, but which can massively accelerate your hifdh. And then at the end of this video, I'm actually going to do a live memorization demonstration on camera for you, so you can see exactly how the process works in practice and how you can do it too. So the first tip is memorize in the morning with full focus. Where, when, and how you memorize matters a lot more than people think. You want to memorize in the morning if possible, when your mind is fresh and before the noise of the day starts entering into your head. After Fajr is ideal because there's great barakah at that time due to the famous dua of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, "O Allah, bless my nation in their early mornings." That is the Prophet asking for our mornings to be blessed if we wake up and we do the effort then. That blessing shows up in a very practical way. Focusing just feels easier in the morning. You'll quite quickly realize that memorization in the morning tends to stick better as well. And it removes a lot of the distractions because other people are not online at that point. The notifications are not there, the messages aren't coming through, the tabs don't necessarily need to be open, people aren't constantly interrupting you. Deep memorization needs deep focus, and even small distractions everywhere break your concentration more than you realize. And you know what? Posture also matters. This is a little thing, but sitting upright, being alert, being engaged with what you're reading actually makes a difference. If you're slouched on a sofa, half asleep, your brain treats your session casually as well. But when you sit with intention, with respect, your mind switches into learning mode. And the goal here is simple. Create conditions where your brain is fully available to memorize. Okay, tip number 2 is treat memorization like holding territory in a battle game. One of the best ways I can think about Quran memorization is this. Memorizing the Quran is like conquering new lands. It's quite easy to walk into new territory. The hard part, as every army knows, is holding on to it. And then eventually, once your territory becomes large enough, it becomes difficult to even keep track of everything you already control and doing those patrols that you regularly need to do in order to maintain your presence there. So what do good rulers do? They govern properly, and hifdh works exactly in the same way. You need systems, you need organization, you need rotation, you need to regularly revisit your ajza, your chapters, and keep yourself fully aware of what's going on inside them. You need to revisit them because sometimes the new stuff that you've learned, it has similar verses or similar words within the new ajza that you've learned. So you need to revisit the old stuff to make sure that you are understanding the connective tissue and segmenting that this is that time that this word is used and this is that time that that word is used as well. So it's never once and done with the ajza of the Quran. And this is exactly why traditional systems like learning your sabak, your sabki, and your door exist. They're essentially a structured way of governing your memorization so it stays long term. And without that structure, things start to slip. But with it, everything stays stable and connected and under control. The key idea is this: don't just memorize and move on. Build a system that helps you retain what you've already memorized. Tip number 3 is to stop relying on just one method of learning. Most people think memorization is just about repetition, but the strongest huffaz that I know actually use multiple inputs at the same time. That means you should be reading the verse, listening to it, and reciting it out loud together. Each input strengthens the memory in a different way. If possible, you try to listen to a skilled reciter before you begin even memorizing. This helps lock in correct pronunciation and rhythm from the first time you hear it, because you naturally start to imitate their tone and flow, which makes recall easier later. And it really frustrates me with my son because he tries to guess the thing that is coming next and he often gets it wrong. And the problem is the very first time you are making that first cut into the soil, that first cut into your memory, that sticks, unfortunately, and it's very hard, because then you'll have found it yourself when you're memorizing. You start repeating the mistake that you put in there in the first place. So the very first time that you're reading something, you need to make sure that you get it absolutely bang on. Go really slowly and read it step by step, word by word, and listen to someone doing it perfectly before you try to do it. Because the moment those first wrong words come out, it can take literally a lifetime of revision to get that out of your system once more. So make sure you get that right first time. You should also be visually aware of the page. Many strong memorizers can mentally picture where a verse sits in the page, the left side, the right side, the top of the page, the end of the line. That visual anchor becomes another important trigger for recall. And the more hooks you attach to a verse, the sound, the sight, the speed, the rhythm, the easier it becomes to retrieve it later on. The fourth tip is something that most people actually end up avoiding, but it's absolutely essential. You need to test your memorization under pressure. It's easy to feel like you know something when you're reading it to yourself, but the real test is when you remove the page, try to recite it from memory without support whatsoever. That's where the gaps show up. So you should regularly recite to someone else, a teacher, a friend, or anyone who can listen and correct you. That pressure of reading to someone else reveals the weak points immediately. Think of it like stress testing a building. The parts that are weak will crack first, and that's exactly what you want, because then you know what needs fixing rather than leaving it under the surface and not realizing that it's actually quite weak. Now, in today's world, even if you don't always have someone available, there are tools that can help simulate this. For example, apps like Tartil can listen to your recitation and help flag mistakes in real time, which is a really useful way to get extra practice in on your own. But of course, nothing quite beats a live person, a teacher or someone listening to you properly, because that's the gold standard. They can pick up the nuance, the hesitation, the patterns in your mistakes that an app might miss. I know exactly what is going on as an experienced teacher when a child is reading to me. I know that he is thinking, it's either this word or that word. Let me try this word and see what his reaction is like. And if it's not that, then it must be this word. Technically, that is not a mistake, but actually it kind of is, because he hasn't quite understood which of those it is. And he's kind of using guessing, and he's using my reactions as a cue for him to figure out what is the right thing. And of course, I may not necessarily always be there. So teachers pick up things that a Tartil app may not necessarily. The goal isn't just to get through your memorization. The goal is to be stable enough that it holds under pressure. And I think the absolute pinnacle of this is reading in Taraweeh. When you have to read in front of everyone in Taraweeh completely from memory, and a lot of people are relying on you to get that right, that is when you know that your hifdh is really properly rock solid. Tip number 5, focus on fixing your mistakes immediately. The 5th tip is about how you handle errors. Because when you make a mistake, don't ignore it and move on and say, oh, I'm going to get back to it and I'll look at these all in the round. No, fix it immediately. Mistakes in memorization behave like wrinkles in clothing. If you leave them there, they set in deeper and deeper over time. And the longer you leave an error, the harder it becomes to correct later. That's why your first attempt at memorization matters so much. If you learn something incorrectly from the beginning, you're not just memorizing the verse, you're memorizing the mistake. So spend that time getting it right the first time and then build the speed afterwards. Okay. Tip number 6 is using logic, patterns, and triggers, not just repetition when memorizing. And this is the final tip, and it's to stop treating memorization as pure repetition alone. Yes, repetition is important. It's the bedrock of how you learn. But the strongest memorizers also use logic, patterns, and memory triggers. They understand the meaning, and that can be a trigger for them as well. So for example, the Qur'an has many similar verses, mutashabihat, and instead of brute forcing them, you should actively learn what makes them different. Where does this version appear and why? What has changed in the wording? What comes before and after it? And then you should use this to build mental triggers for yourself. So as you approach the difficult section or certain mutashabihat, you should already know, this is where I usually make a mistake. Here I'm getting into choppy territory, and this is where I tend to forget the next line. And what I need to remember is just this word. And when I get this word, the rest of it automatically follows. So you build yourself these mental triggers as you start approaching problematic areas. Like for example, my daughter Bilqis was learning Surah Kuwirat yesterday. إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ وَإِذَا النُّجُومُ انْكَدَرَتْ وَإِذَا الْجِبَالُ سُيِّرَتْ, and then she was forgetting وَإِذَا الْعِشَارُ عُطِّلَتْ. So then we focused on وَإِذَا الْجِبَالُ سُيِّرَتْ وَإِذَا Isharu, wa idal isharu. Isharu was a key word. If she got that right, all of the rest followed. So that's what I mean by building yourself those mental triggers. That awareness itself becomes a cue that helps you stay alert and avoid errors whilst you're in the recitation mode. Over time, you're not just memorizing words, you're building a structured map of patterns in your mind. Okay. Now the fun bit. I want to show you exactly how this actually works in real life. Because up to now, everything I've said is theory, but memorization is one of those things where you only really understand it when you see it happening step by step. So I'm going to do a live demonstration of how I personally approach memorizing new material. And now, just to be clear, I've already memorized the Qur'an, so to make this a fair example, instead, I'm going to memorize some poems of Imam Shafi'i. The process is exactly the same regardless of what you're memorizing. So the first thing is, I've actually got a physical copy. So this is a diwan of Imam Shafi'i that me and Mustafa Al-Qabbani translated. You can actually buy this. It's a charity project, so all the proceeds go to charity. So if you want to buy it, or you can download it free online as well, if you want to do that as well. I'm picking a random couplet. The man is by what he knows. That's the name of the couplet. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read it once, then I'm going to read the translation, and then I'm going to listen how that verse comes out, and then we're going to start. The man is by what he knows. تعلم فليس المرء يولد عالما وليس أخو علم كمن هو جاهل وإن كبير القوم لا علم عنده صغير إذا التفت عليه الجحافل. And notice how I went very slowly there, because I wanted to make sure that I nailed the pronunciation right the first time, because it sticks in your memory like glue. وَإِنَّ صَغِيرَ الْقَوْمِ إِنْ كَانَ عَالِمًا كَبِيرٌ إِذَا رُدَّتْ إِلَيْهِ الْمَحَافِلُ. Okay, so I've read that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the English translation. Please learn, for none's a scholar by descent, and those who know aren't like the ignorant. A leader of his people who knows not will shrink when hordes then ask about his thoughts, while men who are deemed of little consequence grow great in gathering when speaking sense. Okay, now I'm going to put up the men at work signs, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to focus on the first line. تعلم فليس المرء يولد عالما. There's an imperative. تعلم فليس المرء يولد عالما, because man is not born as an alim. So it's saying learn, for man is not born as a scholar. تعلم فليس المرء يولد عالما وليس أخو علم كمن هو جاهل. So وليس is the key thing, because now that's the next bit that starts, right? So I'm going to keep that as a mental trigger. وليس أخو علم كمن هو جاهل. So أخو علم is someone with knowledge, and the opposite of that is jahil. So وليس أخو علم كمن هو جاهل. تعلم. I remember the imperative from the first verse now. تعلم, and I've forgotten what it says after that. تعلم فليس المرء يولد عالما وليس أخو علم كمن هو جاهل. And the walaysa got me out of the tricky spot there. تعلم فليس المرء يولد عالما وليس أخو علم كمن هو جاهل. Okay, so I'm just going to say that a few times. Now that I feel like I've got that, there's a moment when you get it. Now you need to just nail it down 2 or 3 times. تعلم, and I might, physically now walk around and move around a little bit. تعلم فليس المرء يولد عالما وليس أخو علم كمن هو جاهل. And I noticed I didn't commit myself. I kind of forgot there, but I didn't commit. I just slowed down and made sure I got that right before I carried on. This is a very sensitive stage. You've got it, but you want to just really hold the territory down. تعلم فليس المرء يولد عالما وليس أخو علم كمن هو جاهل. Now if I take a step back, okay, I'm happy with this, but I just want to now take a step back and understand what it is that I've memorized. So it's saying, learn, you should study, because a man isn't born a scholar. You earn that. And the reason why you want to earn this, because the person who is a scholar is not an ignorant person. Okay, so I've got it. تعلم فليس المرء يولد عالما وليس أخو علم كمن هو جاهل. All right, I'm happy with that. وإن كبير القوم لا علم عنده صغير إذا التفت عليه الجحافل. صغير إذا التفت عليه الجحافل. A leader of his people who knows not, he will shrink when hordes then ask about his thoughts. إذا التفت عليه الجحافل. وإن كبير القوم لا علم عنده وإن كبير القوم لا علم عنده صغير إذا التفت عليه الجحافل. So here, إذا التفت عليه الجحافل, these two words are relatively less common, so I'm going to be using them as mental triggers or hooks to get myself to the next stage. وإن كبير القوم لا علم عنده صغير إذا التفت عليه الجحافل. So the صغير is actually just a continuation of the first bit. So I'm using that now as a hook to pull myself into the next bit of the verse. تعلم فليس المرء يولد عالما وليس أخو علم وليس أخو علم كمن هو جاهل كمن هو جاهل. So I forgot that, you see. Now you need to just make sure that you're bedding in. وإن كبير القوم لا علم عنده صغير إذا التفت عليه الجحافل. تعلم فليس المرء يولد عالما وليس أخو علم كمن هو جاهل. وإن كبير القوم لا علم عنده صغير إذا التفت عليه الجحافل. I'm happy with that. Okay, so now we carry on. وَإِنَّ صَغِيرَ الْقَوْمِ إِنْ كَانَ عَالِمًا كَبِيرٌ إِذَا رُدَّتْ إِلَيْهِ الْمَحَافِلُ. And while men who are deemed of little consequence, they grow great in gatherings when speaking sense. So it's not a literal translation, but it helps preserve the meaning and the rhythm. وَإِنَّ صَغِيرَ الْقَوْمِ إِنْ كَانَ عَالِمًا كَبِيرٌ إِذَا رُدَّتْ إِلَيْهِ الْمَحَافِلُ. So this is it's very linked to the structure of the verse before it. So that's both a strength but also a weakness when it comes to memorization. So we want to make sure that we get it right. وَإِنَّ صَغِيرَ الْقَوْمِ إِنْ كَانَ عَالِمًا. That's a slight difference from the previous verse. وَإِنَّ صَغِيرَ الْقَوْمِ إِنْ كَانَ عَالِمًا كَبِيرٌ إِذَا رُدَّتْ إِلَيْهِ الْمَحَافِلُ. So إِلَيْهِ instead of عَلَيْهِ, right? So إِلَيْهِ is the difference. So now I think I should be able to get through all of this. تَعَلَّمْ فَلَيْسَ الْمَرْءُ يُولَدُ عَالِمًا وَلَيْسَ أخو علم كمن هو جاهل. وإن كبير القوم لا علم عنده صغير إذا التفت عليه الجحافل. وإن صغير القوم إن كان عالما كبير إذا ردت إليه المحافل. And so that's me pretty much done, but I now want to really make sure that I'm holding that down, and afterwards what I'm going to do is recite this a few more times, and then I'll leave this probably for a few hours, and maybe I'll just go back to it, read it again, and just try and read it for memorization, and then once more in the evening, and that's me done. And then tomorrow, ideally I read it to a teacher, and then I might revisit this every day for a few days in the week, and then I know I've got this held down, and then I might revisit this every month or so, every 2 weeks, and then every month, and then every few months, and I might pop this out in a talk that I might do, and then I know that I fully nailed this down. And so folks, that is how you memorize. I hope that's been useful, and the key idea that I want you to take away from this video is that you don't need to be super talented to memorize the Qur'an quickly. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that He has made the Qur'an easy, far easier than even poetry, to remember for those who seek to learn. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. So Allah says, we have certainly made the Qur'an easy to remember. So is there someone who is going to be mindful and step up and actually start remembering it? The Qur'an is something that can be memorized at any age, dear brothers and sisters. It just requires consistency and the willingness to stick with it over time. And if you apply the techniques I mentioned in this video properly, you can dramatically speed up your progress compared to the average approach most people take. Lastly, I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places barakah in your memorization, makes it easy for you, and that you don't just memorize the Qur'an, but that you live it, you embody it, and you let it shape who you are. And if you found this useful, I'd recommend you watch this video next, where I go into a more complete step-by-step hifdh system in detail as well. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum.